Hello and welcome everyone to the world famous Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Andrew Medina. I am member number 1212 and I'm so glad to be your host for the evening. We got another great program coming at you tonight. I am joined by the one and only David McGuire to talk about his adventures in shark conservation. So without further ado, let's dive right in. David, welcome to the Adventurers Club.
Thank you. Great to be here. Exalted company and great history, huh?
And I do want to dive in, but real quick, you have a connection to another speaker who spoke here, Jeff Johnson, and you were the captain on his boat in the film 180 South. So, what was that like? And, how did that bring you to here?
It was a great adventure. It was great to be with Jeff and the Malloys and Rick Ridgway, who was a member, I believe.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I got invited to help them out. There was a Chilean young man who had got a boat but didn't have a lot of experience, so they wanted somebody who was a sailing captain, and I happened to be on the backside of Santa Cruz Island on my boat, single-handing down to Mexico. And actually, I had my dog with me, too.
All right, first mate.
But so he's like, what are you doing? We need help. And so we made this film called 180 South, and it was an adventure. It was a bit of a redo of what Doug Tompkins and Yvonne Chouinard and Royal Robbins, they did a road trip down and essentially discovered Patagonia, at least for the the colonial side.
Sure.
And Mount Fitzgerald and returned, and of course, history, the Corcovado that Doug and Melissa helped create, the national park. And so the idea was to get these young surfers to kind of do the same thing, only since they're surfers, they're not going to take a van, we were going to drive down, and we mapped out all these great surf spots along the way.
Nice.
So the idea is that was going to be a bit of a homage, a redo of what Chouinard and his buddies did in the 60s in an old Dodge van.
Sure.
In a sailboat. But it turned into more of an adventure story. We got dismasted between the Galapagos and Rapa Nui, and we stayed in Rapa Nui for about 6 weeks, and jury-rigged a mast and surfed a little bit. And I got to dive. I was the underwater cameraman and behind the camera. I wasn't supposed to be in it until we lost the mast. You see me,
right?
Because we had to get the mast aboard and get the gear and everything. But it was a really fun story and really great to be with the whole Patagonia crew.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was an incredible story. If you've not seen the movie, definitely recommend 180 South. But we're here tonight, David, to talk about you and your adventures in shark conservation. So what is the name of your organization, and how long have you been doing what you're doing?
We were founded in 2006 as a nonprofit. Started a long time earlier.
Sure.
But so it's called Shark Stewards, and our mission is to restore ocean health, protect endangered species, in particular sharks, endangered sharks and rays, from overfishing and the shark fin trade, and protect critical marine habitat.
Okay.
And so we're advocates. We work in policy, we work in education, we try to inspire, especially youth, and divers and people to engage. And so this is Community Science Month, so that's why I really wanted to talk about community and science because adventurers are community scientists. A lot of the explorers, a lot of the adventurers, Sir Edmund Hillary, they're taking measurements, they're taking observations.
Sure.
The early adventurers were natural historians or brought natural historians along. And so I think it's very appropriate that community science or citizen science is really growing now. And so we can all provide information, we can all give data, especially electronically with applications and the internet. There's a huge amount of data out there. And it's not just one guy or woman in a lab coat. It's now thousands or millions of people collecting information through BioBlitzes or for us for Shark Pattern ID.
Yeah. And I like your sort of description of it, it going from this sort of very one-off, like one person kind of climbing the mountain, doing pressure readings at different levels, to now it's a community effort. We already give so much data to whatever companies nowadays, and it feels like it's a natural step
without
to just
asking.
Exactly, without even asking. So it feels like a natural step to just be able to, hit a couple buttons and, really help advance scientific inquiry. So this is a passion of yours, obviously. Where does that come from for you?
Well, the ocean is my passion. I grew up in LA. I'm a Valley boy. And I used to think I lived so far from the ocean. It was like 25 minutes to Topanga Beach.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, you know, I would take the bus or hitchhike. I fell in love when I first got in, 6 or 7, and started surfing. And then I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I was encouraged by a really great teacher between junior high and I went to summer school. And Dr. Siders was his name. And he really inspired me to be a marine biologist. Like, I could make a living doing something I love.
What a concept.
And it took a lot of work and a lot of school in between, but you know, there's a lot of adventure in my education, my work previously at the university, but also now, especially in Shark Stewards. We do a lot of diving, a lot of expeditions, have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
While trying to do the good work that needs to be done.
Yeah, help out a little bit, save the planet a little bit. So obviously there's a lot of fish in the sea, and you know there's a lot of endangered fish as well. So what is it about sharks in particular that sort of drew you to them?
Well, sadly, there aren't as many fish in the sea.
Yeah,
particularly since the 1950s, we've collapsed or overfished 70% of our tuna stocks. Right. Particularly some of the sharks that we're working with. They're less than 5% or even 2% left. And this is within 50 years of really industrial fishing pressure. We think of the ocean as limitless, as boundless. We look across the horizon, we wonder what's down at the depths, we try to explore, but 80% of the ocean is unmapped. There's so little we know. We're discovering new species all the time. There was just a big biocensus that discovered 600 species, including a new species of shark, a ray. And it's like there's so much to know about the ocean, but we tend to focus on what we can eat or burn or make money off of and not try to understand how we belong as part of that ocean ecosystem, and those animals and plants belong, and we need to live in a more integrative fashion. And we're experiencing that now. I just had a conversation about this harmful algal bloom that's occurring right now off of the Southern California coast. That's killing cetaceans and other marine mammals, and this is an imbalance in our ecosystem. This is a diatom that's always lived here, but now it's out of balance because of essentially warm sea surface temperatures and climate change.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So there's a lot of fish, but there's a lot less, and we need to think more about protecting them. So to answer your question, why sharks? I was on an expedition sailing across the Pacific in the central Tuamotus, actually, French Polynesia, and we were looking at atolls that had super healthy reefs, intact trophic levels, and a lot of reef sharks. We'd go to another one, it's like, where are the sharks? They're gone. And I was a shooter above land, and they said, hey, you're a cameraman, right? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. And they said, well, here's the camera. And that was actually the camera that's on there. Oh, wow. Here's your camera. Just shoot what you see, and we'll look at coral health, coral cover, what the fish are, look at different species. Well, the sharks are the first thing that come up to you in these, you know, there's like 100 gray reefs. You're like, oh my God, this is crazy. But the other systems, there are no sharks. We're like, what's going on with the sharks? And we asked the Paumotan, the basically pearl fishermen, really undeveloped islands. And they said the tuna fishermen get money for the shark fins. And it's like, what? And we went into the main port of Papeete and went onto a ship that was Taiwanese flag, and the whole ship was lined with dried shark fins. Oh, wow. And I'm like, what's going on here? And we asked them. It wasn't illegal. There were no condemnation. This is like the early 2000s. Yeah. And they said, oh, it's the shark finners. They go to China. That's a delicacy for shark fin soup. And there's a huge demand, and it's like money. It's like black gold. And the sharks aren't worth any money because the meat spoils, doesn't taste as good as a tuna. It's tough. So I went back. I was working at UC Berkeley at the time and did some research and realized the magnitude. I looked at trade records. I looked at the economics. Yeah. It's like, this is extreme, and it's on nobody's radar. This is before Rob Stewart made Shark Water. A young guy went down to Costa Rica with Sea Shepherd and really did a great film called Shark Water. So we made a film called Shark Stewards of the Reef and showed the importance of sharks ecologically. And that was really like Dr. Enrique Sala with Scripps Institute and National Geographic. He's Pristine Seas. Yeah. He's the guy who really documented the importance of apex predators to a stable ocean ecosystem. And you remove that, it's like taking the roof off the house and the rain falls in and the floors buckle and the walls fall down. And so essentially you need those predators. And we saw that And he documented it ecologically in scientific papers, but I'm like, we need to start doing something about this trade. And since then, there's been, I think we passed the first shark fin trade law, started here in California, but the first one was in Hawaii. Under President Biden, the Federal Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act was signed, so the U.S. will not import, export, or sell shark fin soup. There are only a couple countries in the world that do that, so it's still a real problem. So it's driven by this high demand for this luxury item, and also the economics of China. Post-Mao, they went from a communist nation really to a capitalist, social capitalism, right. And so they're consuming a lot, and there's the largest middle class on the planet, and they want things that we want, right? They want luxuries, they want cars and refrigerators, and unfortunately the planet can't withstand all the people in the world, including us, who want all these things that take all this energy, and especially wildlife. You know, wildlife cannot withstand the burden that we're placing on it, and sharks are the wildest.
Yeah, and so I'm just curious, because like, people know about shark fin soup, people know it's like a desirable thing, but why, do you know why exactly it is so desirable?
Well, I've spent a lot of time in China and been offered shark fin soup a lot, because it's an honorific, it's an act of graciousness. So it's all about face and prestige and cachet. And so if it was us, it's like, hey, I'm gonna buy you the best bottle of champagne and just bro you out, like, or you're a businessman, right? It's eaten at business banquets, or it used to be eaten at Chinese business functions, but President Xi said no, just because of just waste. There was a lot of misuse of party funds by party members, and so there's a big list, and shark fin soup was on it. But it's really about prestige, and it's at banquets and weddings, and it's about economy of scale. There's so many people who demanded it suddenly who could afford it.
Yes.
And then there's just not enough supply. So it really comes down to supply and demand. And we need to change the mindset really of supply. We're trying to intervene. We're trying to manage our fisheries, which we're not doing very well globally. We really need to manage the human factor and our perceptions.
Sure. Can we go back one slide real quick, Phoebe? Because this is an absolutely incredible picture. So where is this, and are those all hammerheads?
Those are hammerheads, yeah, scalped hammerheads.
And I didn't realize, I guess, that sharks kind of traveled in groups like that.
Some do, some in loose, but they call it a shiver of sharks.
A shiver.
And this is in Costa Rica. So this is in Cocos Island, about 400 miles off of Costa Rica. It's a national park, it's a reserve. Mostly, like we heard about the gentleman listing all the sharks. When you go to Malapascua in the Philippines, if you go to Cabo Polmo, the place to go to see the sharks are the places where they're protected. And hammerheads we're working with in particular because they're highly susceptible to death as bycatch. Essentially, if they get caught on a line, a fisherman goes, oh, I don't want a shark, I want to cut it loose, it's dead.
Okay.
But they're also aggregate, so they're really easy to fish. And they migrate, so they have these corridors. And so we call it the Hammerhead Highway, so we were able to work with a Costa Rican nonprofit and Ecuadorian to protect the sharks between the mainland and Galapagos and Cocos, because these sharks follow seamounts, and they are able to navigate electromagnetically. They have this ampullae of Lorenzini, which is an organ, electromagnetic, that can detect a nanovolt of electricity, but also magnetic fields. So they actually will read along these seamount chains.
That's incredible.
So the fishermen know this. It's like, here's a seamount, fish up all the hammerheads, and they're all together. They're among the most coveted for their fins, and they're really easy to kill in groups. So one of the areas we're working in now is the Sea of Cortez. So we can skip over this slide later. But in the Sea of Cortez, to create a hammerhead highway connecting the islands in the eastern, sort of the southeastern sea, between La Paz and Loreto, where we've discovered a couple nursery sites because they give live birth. There it is. Thank you. And these sharks they love pinnacles. They sleep or they rest around them. They'll just kind of fly around them, and then they'll come up at night to forage sometimes. And so they're easy, really easy. So Las Animas, which is a very popular, used to be. I helped with Pelagios Cacunha, which is the nonprofit we work with in Baja. There's a film called The Lost Sharks of the Sea of Cortez, or A Lost Treasure, The Sharks of the Sea of Cortez. And all the divers, including Howard Hall and Marty Snyderman, who were great underwater photographers from California, they used to go there because they could shoot the sharks with a camera.
Right.
And they're like, there's no more sharks left. They all got wiped out commercially. And so the goal is to restore those aggregation sites by protecting them and then bring the divers back so the fishermen can get paid. They'll have an alternative livelihood to going and fishing other things because there's no sharks to catch.
Right.
So these areas in the ocean attract hammerheads, and they're really easy to kill. They're critically endangered. The giant hammerhead is extirpated. It's gone from the Sea of Cortez.
Oh, wow.
There's less than 1% scalloped hammerheads left in the Sea of Cortez. I mean, Jacques Cousteau went in the 50s and he called it nature's aquarium because there were so many sharks and giant fish, and it's becoming nature's ocean desert. But fortunately, President Sheinbaum is really forward-thinking. I'm actually very excited to work in Mexico in the environment of marine protection. And she's assigned a minister of marine protection, and they're behind creating these marine protected areas that are driving millions of dollars of tourism. So the Revillagigedo, Socorro, it's a national park, it's a protected area. It's where all the big fish are. It's where the whales are. It's the best place to dive, one of the best in the whole world because it's protected. So Cabo Pomo's another spot. So with hope, we've done a pretty good job in the U.S. with some of our protected areas. We just hopefully today have a new national marine sanctuary that kind of slid underneath Congress's radar so far. It was like a de facto, took 45 days. They didn't have to pass a law. So it's a...
So it keeps rolling.
I've got some slides of that. But, in California, 16% of our state waters are protected area. All the best places to dive, if you're a diver, La Jolla Cove, which is the oldest, Point Lobos. The best places to go, Catalina, the places to see the giant sea bass, because those are protected areas. We know they work. There's more biomass, and they spill over and help the other areas where people are allowed to fish. And we know that spiny lobster are starting to come back in Southern California, and that's largely because of the MPAs.
So what is the process like of reintroducing sharks into an area when they're gone, like the giant hammerheads, or even just like kind of repopulating those highways?
There have only been a couple experiments. We did it with small sharks in Malaysia and Borneo. The cat sharks got fished off the reef, and they were really cute, and people like to eat them, but they're great to see diving, and the bamboo sharks, and they don't really migrate. So they stay on the house reef where you protect them, they stay there. But if they stray, they're fair games. But to reintroduce is difficult. There's a reintroduction right now in Raja Ampat, which is a protected area in Indonesia. And they're putting bamboo, or zebra sharks they call them, or leopard sharks, but they're not like our leopard sharks. But they're really good to eat, apparently. They're docile, they're benthic. They're really slow, they're beautiful, but they've been almost completely fished out, and they're having some success. So if you don't move fast, if you don't migrate, and you stay where the protected area is, you can have success. Trying to restore a pelagic migratory shark, like a great white, we started protecting our white sharks off our coastline in 1993 because we almost fished them completely out. Post-Jaws, I was at school in UC Santa Barbara, watching them pull giant white sharks out and selling them as ceviche and tacos. Even now in Baja, you get a fish taco or ceviche, it's probably shark. It's not whitefish or cod or whatever. There's a lot of euphemisms. But we've been protecting them. Now we're reading about them a lot. All those out there in Southern California are basically juveniles, young of year, sub-adults. And the big ones, besides the mothers that are down here giving birth, because they give live birth, they pup. They like it down here because it's warm. And then the big sharks are up north where their prey is. So it took almost 50 years for that population to recover, where it's just now maybe half. We don't know what the pre-hunting threshold was. It wasn't a lot because they're really big sharks. But it's still, now we're like, oh my God, there's so many great white sharks. It's like, not really. It's just not getting to the point where the population is stable. It's not going to collapse again. It was almost functionally extinct. So with other sharks, hammerheads, we just have to hope they come back, right? So we protect the nurseries, which are usually estuaries and mangrove sites, which are nice to protect anyway because of all these other beneficial services, larval fish, a lot of reproduction, birds, tourism. Mangroves are really great habitat, carbon sinks. And so we discovered what Dr. Ketchum has really, and tagged these hammerheads. And now we're like, okay, where do they go? So like protect the big females, right? Really, if you want to protect a population, probably anything, you need to protect the mature females. And then the ones especially that are reproductively active. And the larger they are, the older they are, the more reproductively successful they are. So they have healthier, more babies. We call them BOFs, big old fecund females. And so you want to protect the big females. And then you want to protect the babies, right? And then maybe get the teenage boys, because they're like, a burden on society. But that's how fisheries are actually managed. This is actually how a lot of fisheries are managed. It's like you can only get the males between this length. Depends on the species, of course. But it's essentially, to answer your question, it's really hard to reintroduce sharks. So we need to protect them where they are abundant in the few hot spots in the world.
Yeah.
And fortunately, dive tourism is really supporting that.
So is there any, how do you run the calculus between, because there's environmental effects to tourism as well. You have more boats, you have more sort of oil in the water, fuel, expended, but obviously is maybe good for marine life in other ways because there's no fishing. So how do you kind of walk that line between less fishing, more tourism?
Right.
How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we can love a thing too much, as we know from some of our national parks even.
Right.
And there is a fine line, and it needs to be managed. And sometimes it could be managed amongst themselves. I think was it Carlos talked about Isla Carmen, and there's bull sharks that are recovering. There's whale sharks, which people love to see. There was a problem earlier on, but I remember hearing a story where somebody killed a whale shark, and the other fishermen who were not fishing all the time, they're actually taking tourists out, kind of ran the guy out of town. So they're kind of self-enforcing because they have legitimate stakes in the game, right?
Yeah.
So that's hopefully what some incentive is, but sometimes you just need to regulate, right? It's just have to have fines or disincentives. But I think, again, alternative livelihoods. A lot of the oceans are getting fished out anyway, especially in the Coral Triangle.
Sure.
Where they're reliant upon fish for their protein. And so creating these areas that are protected and then tourism dollars helping. Yeah, there's some bruised noses. I mean, Cebu in the Philippines for whale sharks, they're feeding them. We're seeing that they're not migrating. We're changing their behavior.
Oh, wow.
We see that especially with marine mammals, with tourism. That's why we're supposed to stay 100 yards. We don't approach a whale with a baby. Right. But there are industry standards, and there's some pressure being pushed on bad actors. We're actually publishing a report this year on shark ecotourism around the world, the economic value, which is over $1 billion.
Right.
But also just some of that there are deleterious impacts, but at least they're still living because, especially a whale shark or, a shark that really tastes good, like a mako shark or something, they just, they're hard to protect. They migrate a long distance, and you could protect them here off our coast, and they get offshore, they're gone.
Go over there, and then they're fair game. No, for sure. You have a YouTube channel. You shoot. You're an underwater cameraman among many of your other talents. But you have a YouTube channel. I would recommend you all check it out. But you have some videos where they're big old sharks that swim right up to you, and you can just feel the lack of tension in the camera work, and as they just kind of swim on by. So how do you kind of keep cool in those circumstances, and how many of those situations have you been in where a shark just comes up to check you out of the gloom?
Not enough. I definitely seek them out. The camera I showed earlier, that big Gates housing, I think it was, that thing is like a piece of furniture. And the small cameras now are a lot smaller. I have this little polycarb 8K mirrorless camera. The whole thing weighs 8 pounds.
Wow.
It's it doesn't give you as much protection, but no, we've been working in Hawaii on a photo ID study, the oceanic white tips, which are very curious and can be aggressive. And if you have a camera, you could just kind of fend them off. But you can read the shark. A lot of times, especially white sharks, I dive the Farallon Islands, and and out here, when I was an undergrad, out at Kyler Cove and San Miguel Islands, kind of a hot spot where all the marine mammals, the pinnipeds are. And they'll come at you and check you out. Like they swim right at you.
Oh, yeah.
They're not afraid, right?
Curious little guy, yeah.
And then, but if you keep your eyes on them, I mean, we're predators too. We're bigger predators than they are. So you keep your eye on them. I mean, this is advice for people. If you're a surfer or if you're a swimmer, if you see a shark, don't turn your back. It's like running away from a dog that's growling at you.
Right.
So keep your eyes on it. But if their fins are dropped or if they're shivering, depending on the species, they're telling you, like, this is my space and you're in it.
Yeah.
And there have been times, like we worked on Palmyra Atoll with the California Academy of Sciences and Scripps to do the assessment for what's now a national marine monument. And you get in there, and there are a couple times, because like we had this super safety-conscious dive master. It's like, come on, we're supposed to count the sharks. We got to get in with them. We need to know what's here. That's the whole point, right? And we got in this one corner, and first we flinched, like, you can't go in, there's a tiger shark. It's like, this is the whole point. It's like, okay, there's a lot of big tigers at Palmyra because it's an oceanic atoll.
Gotcha.
But we got in this corner, and all the gray reefs, and gray reefs can get a little squirrely around dusk and dawn. That's when they feed.
Okay.
And we jumped in, and it's like, boom! It's like they all dropped their fins and came to them like, whoa! We're like basically like those penguins that come out of the ice after a leopard. So, we're just going back.
Immediately back in. Yeah.
It was like, I look at the dive, and I was like, yeah, that was a riskful encounter. Like they were but they were telling us. They were like telling us, like, this is our space, and so, yeah, it's like any other kind of wildlife.
Sure.
We can understand their behavior. That can be unpredictable too. I mean, it's not like some people ride sharks, or there are people who are super famous, beautiful YouTubers that are like how to fend off a tiger. You know what? They're going to be calling you Lefty one of these days, because it's not a pet. That's a kitty that is a tiger shark, which is the 800-pound voracious predator that's super, like, they're extraordinary how fast they are.
Yeah.
Like a white shark can snap its head like you could barely, and meanwhile they're just like slow moving, just move ba-doo, you don't expect it. So, they're dangerous animals, and you have to respect that.
So what is the thing that you think people get wrong about sharks? Like when people, like the public consciousness, we're a few years out from Jaws now, but what do you think is the thing that people still get wrong about sharks?
50 years this year from Peter Benchley's book,
really?
not the movie, but the book. And that was influential to me. I actually loved it. I was in junior high during Jaws and surfing at Topanga Beach. And it was like, I remember seeing in the drive-in, and people are freaking out. And it was a good movie. The book was better, I think. But it's like, it really did something visceral, right?
Yeah.
Very effective story, and a good film to this day. It took Spielberg 45 years to sort of recant. We pressured him for 10 years, like, come on, say something good about sharks. And he's like, yeah, I guess I didn't really mean for the movie to have that impact, which I'm sure he didn't, but he was very effective at it.
Sure.
But I remember surfing, and so he's like, shark, and the early surfers are just like, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, there's nobody in the water. And this is before I was into sharks, and it was a leopard shark. It's like a little shark, you had to gub you to death. But it was like they saw the fin, and so that movie had such a negative influence. It had a big spin-off, it's a little bit better now, but Discovery Shark Week, it was Shark Attack Week. I mean, it was all about redo. It was all about the thrill or the danger or the biologist going in and doing the tag. It's like all this drama. It's like, really, it's hard to find the sharks to make the movie. So there's a lot of backstory there. But, we have maybe some ancestral fear, which is a good thing to have for survival.
Right.
But 99% of the people aren't underwater with them.
Yeah.
But they're still scared of them. And I think Jaws really somehow amplified that, whatever atavistic fear. And, there are old ladies in Duluth who didn't want to get in the bathtub after that film.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good movie. I wish I could make a movie that good and that influential on the other side.
In the other way, yeah. So, part of what you do is focus on community science. So what is community science, and what is community science? Let's start there.
Well, it's called community science now. It was citizen science, but essentially it started out, I think, as explorers and adventurers who were going to places where nobody had ever seen anything, or the early days of voyaging, like Charles Darwin, for example, was a naturalist on the Beagle.
Sure.
Sir Joseph Banks, went with Captain Cook and Forrester. They'd go to these remote places and collect bugs and birds and animals and then take them back to some musty museum and draw pictures or describe them. Now we do less of that, killing and taking, or definitely don't kill or take as many. We can take genetics, we can take photographs.
Right.
But it's really something that's grown in the past 10 years. There's an app called iNaturalist that was developed at Berkeley, and now the California Academy of Sciences, Scott Lowry, developed this app, and now it's huge, and there's millions of observations, and there are bio-blitzes where people just go out, and now we take kids, and it's like, okay, here's your phone, do something good with it, don't TikTok, put it on, take a picture, describe what it is, you put it in, it's geo-referenced, so it has a latitude, longitude, and then what's great is that it's vetted. And so a scientist can come in, and I started the Shark project on iNaturalist. I looked at it because I get alerts all the time. I have a separate email for it.
Sure.
And there are millions of observations around the world on this project now.
Oh, nice.
And it's been going like 15, 20 years. I don't know how long. Yeah, it was going when I've been gone from Berkeley for 25 years. So, so it's a really, but it wasn't as widely accessible because cell phones were more expensive and they weren't as smart. Now there's so many apps, right? We have too many apps. And there are other applications too. There's SciStarter. A lot of people can start their own project. So this is Community Science Month. And we try to do this because I really love to work with kids. And I love to get kids in nature. And so you could take kids out, even if it's a schoolyard, or if you get them, especially inland kids, down to the ocean to experience the ocean. I mean, you'll never be the same once you've seen the ocean, I think. It certainly influenced me.
Sure.
And it can change your whole world and rock their world. So the idea is, but we want to do something good, not just go, oh, let's go whale watching, which is cool, but you might get one whale.
Right.
But you can go along the intertidal or the littoral and just see hundreds of species.
Yeah.
And so that's our Inland Ocean Academy that we developed, and it's really working with teachers and kids to do these eco-blitzes or bio-blitzes, but also to do plastic surveys. So we do beach cleanups when we go to the beach.
Oh, nice.
And we do marine debris. We count the plastics. And now we're actually counting brands to see what is the most prolific brand. So we can kind of bring it back to the manufacturer, Coca-Cola, that you're the largest single-use disposable plastic manufacturer in the world. And that little ringy, the 3 arrows, doesn't mean anything because 9% of plastics are recycled and most plastics are not recyclable. Right. So the idea is, again, community science, get kids out, collect data, and Shark Stewards is very data-driven. We look at trade data, we look at fishing data. In this case, we look at data that volunteers collect, and that plastic data is actually, it's going somewhere. Some of these companies are realizing that they could be responsible for violation of Clean Water Act. For other laws that have been in place for a long time, that they're actually contributing to the problem of ecosystem or aquatic health.
And you told me about some of the algorithms you're working on to help identify sharks, and you can take a picture of them now, and you're saying it can kind of read the patterns on them. Like, can we pull up a picture with a shark with
another one? Well, I can't code, and I would be the worst coder because I am just too impatient. I actually have built my original website with my friend who was a coder. And I'm like, oh God, where's that thing you're missing? The bracket, everything's screwed up because no, I have no patience for that. But there are some really smart people out there who are. And there are a number of these applications. One of them it's called Shark Book. And now it's AI. And so if you take a photograph, and I think there's another shot, and so the leopard sharks are like leopards. Their spots are unique, or bars in the case of ours, or the whale sharks. So it really started as whale sharks, and there's been a long-going project out at the Revillagigedos at Socorro, and dive operators, and I get hits all the time going in, and so it homes in on a certain area. So if you get by the gills, right behind the gills on a whale shark, and it's a unique pattern for every whale shark. It's like our fingerprint.
Interesting.
And so you run it through the algorithm because unless you have really good pictures, you're just like, is that the same one or the spot?
Yeah.
But now with the AI and the algorithm, it goes through and it's like 99% probability this is the same shark. And then for us, we can look at it, it's like, wow, this population is growing.
Yeah.
Or there's a new female. Or this male is missing. It hasn't been seen for 5 years. And what's gone? Is he fished? Is he killed?
Yeah.
Or maybe he's going to come back. Where did he go?
Right.
But the idea, especially with the seven-gill shark, which we started with the Cal Academy, where I'm an associate, the California Academy of Sciences, we started tagging seven-gill sharks with these volunteer fishermen and looking at their movements in the bay. And I got curious because we knew they were giving birth. So we were seeing pups. And it's like, well, these are really weird sharks. They're very basal. They've been around for a couple 100 million years as a lineage, very unchanged or little changed.
Right.
They're typically a deep water shark, but these come into estuaries. And so San Francisco Bay is a nursery site, Puget Sound, Salish Sea.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, we looked at the genetics, and they're actually going in between. It's the same population. They go all the way down to Mexico.
Yeah.
But this population is isolated, probably since Pangaea, when the supercontinent broke apart 200 million years ago. The sharks are on the margins, and these are sharks live on the continental shelf. They don't swim out in the deep ocean, so they're diverging. Well, guaranteed, and it's already been shown by a researcher, that the ones in South Africa are different species or subspecies than ours. Makes sense, right? They've been separated for hundreds of million years. But we know very little about these sharks. They are fished heavily for their livers and during World War II. Now they're fished by sports fishermen.
What was it about their livers that made them
They have
desirable?
oil and vitamin A. So when the blockade happened off of by the Japanese and particularly the Germans on the East Coast, but also here, the fishing fleets couldn't go out. Or the big boats, especially the big trawlers, were getting sunk. So there was a demand for oil as a fine lubricant. And the liver is what helps them float. It's also where they store their energy.
Gotcha.
And so it has this oil-rich compounds, which were used in machining during the war, and then also vitamin A, they thought, at the time for pilots that helped improve their vision. And so they're giving the first vitamins, basically, to pilots from shark liver. But so these seven-gill sharks, same thing. They have different spots. They're really beautiful. They're slow-moving. They're really easy to get a picture of.
Yeah.
You kind of have to hijack them behind a kelp plant, because they are kind of shy.
Right.
But so a friend of mine, Mike Barry's on our board. He created this program called Ocean Sanctuaries. And we had a tag, a colored tag, in the back of this female. And he said, hey, is this your tag? And I said, yeah. When did the shark get there? It was like 9 months after we tagged her. I'm like, wow, I'm going to come down and go diving. So we became friends, and we started diving La Jolla Cove, looking for seven gills and filming them. And so we've had this project, and I think we had like 75 different individuals identified. And I just gave a talk to the South Orange County Dive Club, and one of the guys came up, and he's like, there's this spot off Laguna, and he's like, I see them all the time. I'm like, yeah, let's go diving.
Hell yeah.
They're really cool to see. They're non-aggressive. The only people who've been bit are the ones who are either trying to feed them a fish or in an aquarium.
Right.
And they're really an enigmatic, just beautiful shark. And there are kind of the apex predator of the San Francisco Bay and Puget Sound.
They are beautiful. They are a very beautiful coloration. I will say, they are a little goofy looking, just in the face.
Well, they're always smiling.
Yeah, there's like,
And they have this big, beautiful green eye.
Okay.
Sharks had this, it's a membrane called a tapetum lucidium that like cats also have, a deer, and a deer in the head, like the eye shine.
Right.
And what that does is it focuses light back
Mm-hmm.
onto the retina, so it's very effective adaptation for low light environments. And they have these beautiful emerald eyes. They're a really pretty shark.
Sure.
So we do these community science dives. We have one coming up April 12th. We chartered a boat. We're trying to get divers to come with us.
How many divers do you need?
20 total. I think we had 12 or 13, so we have enough to pay for the boat, so we're going to go.
Okay, great. And like if people here tonight or folks watching online wanted to either dive with you or support you, how can they do that?
Yeah, our website, it's a pop-up. First thing you see comes up says, because we couldn't fill the boat and I was stressing. Until we had 4 people sign up today, thanks to Amy and some of our other friends.
Nice, thank you, Amy.
So sharkstewards.org, it comes up, and it's under events also.
Sharkstewards.org.
And then we're on Instagram and Facebook, all that jazz. I don't do TikTok. You don't see me dancing.
Maybe the sharks, though.
Yeah.
So, for some of this community science stuff, people have to get pretty close to these sharks to take a picture of them, right? So what are the things that you want people to keep in mind as they're doing that to like kind of stay safe and be, conscientious about, the wild animal, the apex predator that they're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, respect, right? Keep your distance. A lot of the people that we work with are experienced divers.
Yeah.
And I don't encourage somebody who's a novice diver to get a camera, period, until they know how to dive.
Right, fair enough.
And we see that in dive students. I teach diving sometimes too. And it's like, put the GoPro away and learn how to breathe.
Right.
And learn how your buoyancy. Then when you got that down, you know
Right.
how much air you have without looking at your gauge, then
Once
you can start taking
live
pictures.
under the water
But
without
being
dying.
safe, being
Yeah.
safe, yeah. You know, being aware of your environment. I mean, a lot of this are basic dive safety techniques anyway. You know, just know what's going on around you, know your exit plan, have a good plan going in, and we actually have a protocol on our website about how you should do it, because we don't want anybody to get hurt doing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then typically the people who are working with have good cameras, so they've been doing it a long time. They've already know how to take pictures. Yeah, so it's just trying to get people to participate. They'll put it on Facebook, but they won't contribute it. It's like, we're not going to sell, we have a contract. We're not going to sell your photo. We're not going to say exactly where that shark was.
Right.
And some people are worried, oh, if we tell you where the sharks are, then somebody's going to go fish it. Well, most of these places are already no-take reserves, like La Jolla Cove. Or you're not going to, the sharks don't stay in one spot. It's like, okay, I was here on Facebook.
Right.
Come on, fish me. You know, I mean, they're moving, right? So the sharks are there anyway. I don't think that's a very credible argument. But it's also a way to get people engaged. Even if you don't see a shark, you see other things. You talk about it. We have a webinar. We talk about the sharks of California. What other species are there? You know, we think about great white sharks or hammerheads, who's charismatic, but we have so many cool species of sharks in California. Horn sharks, swell sharks. The rays are the most speciose. The bat rays, you know, they're just little mini manta rays. You know, they're beautiful. And they're really fun to watch. And they have, you know, they're mudsuckers. They're the benthic vacuum cleaners. You know, they bioturbate. They're really important in their role. So there's a lot we can do in these trips. And even if you don't see a shark, you're not getting skunked.
Sure. And so, you know, where's this picture at?
So this is Cabo Polmo. This is Carmen Pasos. We just did a newsletter because last week was Women's History Month, and honor her. She's on our science team, and she's a Mexican national and lives in California. She did her master's on kind of the recovery of the bull sharks to Cabo Polmo, which is, again, this is a kind of a different kind of community science, but the Castro community, the local fishing community, got tired of their reef being overfished. Like everybody came because it's a nice reef. There's actually coral there, and the big grouper and the snappers. So they appealed to the government to make it a national park, and now they manage the dive operations. And we interviewed them. We're making another film on it. I mean, these people are doing really well, and the fish have come back. So there's big groupers, there's big snappers, and the bull sharks have really come back. And it's a go-to dive destination for people who want to take photographs of bull sharks. So that's what we're trying to replicate up at the Sea of Cortez. So benefit the local community, but also try to restore the local ecosystem.
Right, and you can do both. So when this slide says sharks generate jobs, and so aside from fishing, what kind of jobs do sharks generate? Well,
photography, scuba diving. In the case, this is at the Maldives where you can scuba, but Playa Carmen, Cebu in the Philippines, a lot of the places require La Paz also. You can only snorkel, and there's kind of too many people, so you don't want 1,000 people, and that's a bit of the problem in the Philippines. If you're a photographer, you want to get a really beautiful shot without 100 people in it flailing around, especially people who don't. There are other foreign visitors who don't know how to swim. They've got water wings on and flailing around trying to jump on the shark. So it's a bit of a problem there. But so diving, all the other ancillary services associated with tourism, though.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to pick you up from the airport.
Right.
You had to get there. You got to have lunch, dinner, and breakfast. You got to, you have to stay in a hotel. Somebody's got to make the beds. That generates a huge local economy, or supports one maybe in a different fashion that is pre-existing. And then education. There are people who are just doing guide work, and naturalists, and there's a lot of spin-off in education. And then Of course, there's always T-shirts too.
So what kind of shark is this here?
That's a whale shark.
How would you describe this shark?
Big.
Not
a whale. It's a fish. And then you get up to like 40 feet.
Oh wow. Okay.
They're filter feeders. So we were talking about the baleen out there. They don't have baleen, but they have that same adaptation where they gulp larvae and plankton, and then they push it past this specially adapted filter mechanism that's in their gills. So they exhaust the water. A whale will exhaust it past the baleen in the mouth, but the same mechanism. They're basically just straining the food out and gulping it down. So they're always flying around underwater with their mouths open, and which is why it's. Some of the best shots are the ones where you don't see the tail, you see the mouth.
Big old mouth coming at you.
Yeah.
So they chew with their mouth
But they're
open.
super gentle. I've been in the water with them, and you get really lucky. I was just this summer by this fish farm. So downwind from this Campeche farm, they feed them, the food is like blue-green algae, but there's still a lot that gets through the net. And so it's sort of this stream of poop and fish meal, and that's where we look for the oceanic white tips because they'll come and prey on fish that are eating that.
And we have
this whale shark came through, and it's like, oh my god, it was like the best experience because it was clear water. Kona is super clear water.
Yeah.
Most of the times they're in highly productive water with a lot of plankton or a lot of fish eggs, so that's what you're shooting through. Basically a cloud. But this whale shark was in like Kona water, so clear. It's just it's going to go in the film. It's the most beautiful footage I've ever had myself experience. Yeah.
You've used some words to describe sharks a couple times now, and I just want to make sure that folks out there know what they mean. So, like, you described a shark as like basal.
Basal. It's an evolutionary term, meaning they're not primitive. They're actually very evolved, but they haven't changed in a long time.
Right.
So they're really far down, and they haven't radiated and speciated or even changed that much. Others have, like hammerheads are a new shark. White sharks are a relatively new shark after the Miocene, when a lot of fish species, especially the bony fish, radiated. So that just means they're super deep in the evolutionary tree. White sharks are fairly new.
Oh, are they really? Okay.
And obviously highly adapted. And super good at what they do.
How new is new?
In this case, it'd be like 5 million years.
Okay, yeah.
And then they radiated, they split. This population in the Northeast Pacific about 200,000 years ago from the South Pacific population, South Australia, New Zealand complex. And then there's another group, aggregation, off of South Africa. And so there very few. There's a very remnant population off of North Africa, the Med, but it's almost gone. There was this paper that just came out this year where the scientists detected white sharks through an eDNA. So they found 6 different individuals. They never saw them,
right?
But they detected them through DNA sequencing right off the Med, just the Southern Med.
That's encouraging.
But we were talking about community science. A lot of community science with white sharks, especially when Guadalupe was a tourist destination off of Baja. It's closed now because, again, the Mexican government closed it. There were too many operators, too much chum. Sharks were getting stuck in the cages. Several were documented getting killed, not intentionally, but ramming into the cage.
Yeah.
So they actually shut it down. But through the scarring, because sharks like it rough when it comes to sex. And the females get bitten by the males they grab on because they actually copulate. Sharks do it, they don't spawn. And the male's got to kind of get there somehow, so they'll grab onto the female, and you'll see these circular marks. Well, they stay, and you can actually, through photo ID, you can oh, that's Shirley. She got bit by that dude over there. Some lucky boy got a... Yeah. So anyway, so scarring is one way. So, and also, there's other ways of community science. I mentioned the scavenging of data on Instagram has actually given us fisheries data, including illegal fisheries data. So this is one of my students did this. This is all from Instagram, and these are people posting pictures of themselves, and it gives us a location, a species. It gives us species, frequency, and location.
Oh wow!
And one of the things I'm very interested in is this big sports. Since COVID and during COVID, we saw a lot of people with drones dropping off baited hooks a mile offshore in deep water. and they're bringing in white sharks, or they're bringing in deeper water, more aggressive sharks. They're bringing sharks next to piers, like Manhattan Beach, where a swimmer got bit after a fisherman played it, and that shark was pissed off when they cut the leader, and it just turned and bit somebody. So we're interested in this sort of recreational impact, not only directly to the sharks, and particularly I'm interested in the seven gills because they like to catch the big females, and they're pregnant, they're gravid. So they might have, and they're also fairly fecund, meaning they can have a lot of babies. So they can have almost 60 to 80 babies in there.
Oh, wow.
So if you're a big gamesman and you want the record, which the record's in the San Francisco Bay, they're all pregnant females, and they don't hold them upside down because the babies will spill. They hold them right side. I mean, well, I don't know. They will spontaneously start to abort, but they want to keep the babies because it weighs more.
Right.
And so it's like, well, you didn't just kill one shark; you just killed 85 sharks.
Yeah.
And is that sustainable? We don't know, really, because it's not a species of interest to Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah.
It's not a commercial species. So we can get a lot of data, but also what we can do is get regulation out of it. Unfortunately, we were hoping to alter gear completely from shore and public piers where kids surf and bodyboard and swim. The fishing lobby got in and they said they changed the law right at the 11th hour. When you can't fish for sharks or attract sharks when white sharks are near. That's a state law in California. And I'm like, this is absurd. They're always near somewhere. You don't know where they are. I mean, if they're tagged, Dr. Lowe here at Cal State Long Beach has done great work looking at mostly the smaller sharks and movements and acoustic receivers. But it's like they're moving around. I mean, you could be fishing here. There's no shark, but then there's going to be a shark there. And especially if you're chumming, or if you have a decoy, or you've got a baited hook. So the law was somewhat imperfect, but it did bring up the discussion of chumming off of public piers, which is actually still legal. And we'd like to see that go away from a public safety point of view, really.
Yeah.
Because what we have seen, we did an experiment off of Balboa Pier with this tracking, and you saw residence times of sharks longer, these are great white sharks, stay near the piers where they were fishing, and then they would not have that residency or longevity near the piers when there was no fishing, no chumming.
Right, so we're
it makes
changing
sense,
the behavior.
Right,
yeah.
Unfortunately, that funding, and unfortunately, Dr. Lowe has also lost all his funding, and he's retiring.
Yeah.
See, he can't. So he's an emeritus. He still gets paid, but I have to raise money every year. I told him don't start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
That was my career advice.
So one of the things that we talked about that it's kind of a bummer, unfortunately, but like I was telling you that, or you were telling me that about shark hunting numbers and how they can be sometimes deceptive. And I was telling you that I've seen shark fishing numbers, and it seemed to be going down over the last decade or so. So why is that not always the case, or not necessarily the case?
There was a peak in the early aughts, I think, 2010, 2012. Global shark fishing had gone down. The numbers of sharks, though, are still high. Shark finning, because of shark fin regulations, the actual act, the verb of cutting the fin off a shark and throwing it over the side, obviously cruel, unsustainable, a waste if you're going to use the whole fish. Shark finning is largely and widely condemned. It's illegal in the U.S. and most other fishing nations. Shark fishing is not, and it's not very regulated. So there was a study that just came out by Boris Worm and looked at the metadata, overall shark fishing, and we're still fishing around 80 million sharks a year. It was around 100 million.
Oh, wow.
But there's also a range, statistical range. But still, I mean, really the thing is, there's fewer sharks. But what was interesting, since the finning regulations came into place, there's less finning, we think, industrially.
Yes.
Because then they're easier to nab. A big ship, you got to land those somewhere. The fins have to be landed.
Right.
They're more inspected than small boats.
And they take space to
or beach coastal fishermen. But what we're seeing are more nearshore sharks being fished.
Okay.
So off of West Africa in particular, by the Chinese fleet, also off of the South American coastline. A lot of the small smooth hound sharks, which a leopard shark is, are entering into not only the meat or fertilizer, but the fin market. So we're seeing from DNA studies in Hong Kong, where the major trading hub, that a lot of the pelagic sharks, it looks like they're less being caught. But
that's another word. What's
open
pelagic
ocean.
mean?
Pelagic is
Gotcha.
open ocean. Thanks, sorry. So large migratory species, so like blue sharks, mako sharks, oceanic white tips. There's like 2% left. Yeah, they're catching less because there's hardly any left.
Right.
So we can't really pat ourselves on the back, I hate to say. As much as I've spent my life dedicated towards regulation and education, this is still going on, which again, I think is why you need to manage fisheries. Part of the thing that we're doing now, because of challenges in the US in regulation or deregulation that's going on now, is working internationally under the treaties, Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species, which regulates trade of endangered wildlife and plants. Some of these large-scale UN regional fisheries management organizations. So we took a movie we made in Hawaii called Kahumano, which means the shark keeper, and we showed it to the Hawaii longliners. And Hawaiians have a deep association culturally with sharks, and they don't really kill them or eat them anyway. And so they took the first steps to change gears to not catch sharks in their tuna fleet. And so we took that practice and went to Westpac, which is Western Central Pacific Fisheries Management. And these are multi-nation, US, Mexico, China, Taiwan, Japan. And they all get together and basically arm wrestle over quotas. And they really care about billfish and tuna. That's the money fish, right? But shark fin is worth a lot. And quotas, like mako shark is a marketable species. Blue sharks are the most fished. Somebody was telling me, we used to go around blue sharks sleeping at the surface in the Catalina Channel. I got certified here in 1976. And there were so many blue sharks, you'd have to drive around them, and now you barely see any. And not because we're fishing them here, because they're going offshore and getting killed for their fins. And also, primarily, blue sharks are in either the pet food trade or fertilizer. So there's a lot to deal with when we're dealing with a shark that doesn't have a passport, crosses international borders. And that's what we're trying to focus on, some of these large-scale fisheries, which we did actually. Our colleagues in International Marine Mammal Project started the Dolphin Safe Project because all the dolphins were getting killed in the seining fisheries. We're working towards trying to shark safe fisheries where zero retention. If they catch it, they can't keep it. Oceanic whitetip. And this is what the RFMOs, the regional fisheries, there's like 5 in all the big oceans. They're agreeing to, amongst their whole fleet, to not keep them, not retain these critically endangered species. And then creating the Hammerhead Highway, protecting areas where you can't fish anything in there.
So you're working on, I kind of want to end things off. You're working on a new documentary, right? So what is that going to be about, and when do you expect it to come out? And where can we watch it?
Yeah, we have a couple projects. One's in the Cia Cortez. We'll be going back this winter doing an expedition. And I don't know what it's going to be called. But it's going to be in Spanish also, because the idea is to influence the Spanish government. I'm sorry, the Mexican government. But the other one's in Hawaii. It's a redo of Kahumano, which was very Hawaii-centric and about Hawaiian culture. And put it in some of the film festivals, but just short. But this next one is going to be more about Shark Stewards, our work, kind of legacy. I've had a lot of people die, and I suddenly realized my hair's gray and I'm not as young as maybe I feel. And I've had several people want to do the story, and I never really, I'm always behind the camera. I don't want to talk about me, and I have been and done a couple Shark Weeks or something as a scientist, but so it's not going to be just about me. I'm teaching, it's about a kid. It's about a girl who hasn't seen a shark, and I'm going to teach her scuba diving because we've been free diving. It was started as a free diving film, and Alyssa, our free diver, is a wonderful free diver, can go down 100 feet plus, and we have these beautiful shots of her. But Tyra, the young girl, doesn't know how to free dive. She can't get down there, and so she genuinely wants to see a shark, and she lives in Hawaii, in Kona. So it's her story, really. But I'm kind of in it this time, and just teaching her. And the idea is I want to make a female role model that other kids will see. This girl who, she has a little bit of trepidation and fear, but she's a Hawaiian water girl, and her dad's a surfer, and it's kind of a connection with him. and her culture, but really, like, she wants to see a shark, so we're going to go find a shark, and it'll be out this fall for sure. And
Very nice.
You know, there might be broadcast interest. I have no idea. We'll see how good it is.
Well, look, we'd love to have you back here for that.
That'd be great.
Real quick, this is a white tip, right?
That's an oceanic white tip, not a white tip reef shark. So again,
is that basil or pomodoric? What was the other word you used?
Pelagic.
Pelagic, yeah. Well, like I said.
Yeah, they're pelagic for sure. They were once the most ubiquitous marine invertebrate. They were everywhere. They're lone sharks, but they aggregate suddenly. They were the sharks that came to the plane crashes, the shipwrecks, pre-World War II or post-World War. The great monologue that Quint does on the boat where they're all drinking, and he talks about, you know, the Indianapolis when it got hit by a Japanese U-boat, torpedo. And that was the boat that carried the bomb, so they were under the radar. They literally weren't out there telling the rest of the fleet where they were, and so a lot of men died, a lot of sailors. Turns out most of them died of hypothermia or drowning, but definitely some shark attacks.
For sure.
But that was a pretty graphic scene, but that was associated with that shark.
Yeah. So Shark Stewards is the name of your organization. Go to their website, give them a donation, help them out.
Come dive with us.
Come dive with them. Yeah, there's one like next week. So, you know, get up and go. Those are all the questions that I have. If anyone from the audience has any questions, David, if you don't mind, we'd love to take some.
Dave, I'm going to start off here. There have been some documentaries about, we'll say, almost a sentient side of sharks, with the shark whisperer who's pulling hooks out of bull shark mouths, and the sharks come over to get the hooks removed and things. And we have also, like, my octopus teacher, which, you know, the gentleman creates this relationship with the octopus. Would you just comment, have you seen, how real is that, and have you seen any like any communication or relationship with sharks that are represented from that standpoint?
They're not as smart as an octopus. Sharks are not deep thinkers. They're not poets. A white shark's brain is about that big. And it's basically its sense of smell, its sense of taste, its electromagnetic sense. They're very sensual. And so there's no cerebrum, cerebellum going on. You know, they're streamer, but they're not very, they can learn. They definitely can be habituated. So they know when the dinner bell rings. So when the boat comes into Guadalupe and it drops its anchor, the sharks know. They associate that with food. The oceanic whitetips, there's a buoy where the fishermen coming in will clean the fish. The sharks hear the motor, they'll come in. And some people say that the sharks know them. I don't know. I think it's a stretch. And again, you might become a lefty if you're not careful. You know, there are sort of the shark whisperers. And yeah, this, what's her name? Sandra, the woman in the Bahamas, and she removes the hooks. She also wears a chainmail suit. And she's feeding the sharks, reef sharks, if they get close, and she grabs them really quick. I mean, it's cool. It's nice that she's doing that, but they're not coming in like nuzzling up and thanking her afterwards.
Right.
So, you know, an octopus is an entirely different animal, highly intelligent,
very intelligent,
capable of learning, with a very sophisticated brain and neural system and eye system. And sharks they basically became a mouth with a tail, and it all was pretty good evolutionarily because it worked. And that's a generalism, because really most sharks who are elasmobranchs are the flat sharks, the rays and skates. So far more species of those than what we think of the sharky sharks. But you know, they've been around a long time, 400 million years as a lineage of cartilaginous fish, they're called. They're made out of cartilage. But they're vertebrate, like us. But they've done very well. They've survived 5 great extinctions, and they're not doing so great in the 6th right now.
Thank you. Other questions? Started with Dan.
You touched on cage diving, and I was just wondering, that seemed like a negative story. Do you consider that an ethical practice if done right, or is it not very ethical practice?
I think it can be. Yeah, definitely. I think it was Guadalupe got out of control. It was banned by us. I dive at the Farallon Islands, where the white sharks aggregate. And there were some cage diving operations, and early on, guys would find a dead whale and drag it near the island. That's illegal, and that got cleaned up, and actually the sanctuary banned banned attracting. There's still cage dive operators. They're having no influence, no impact really on the shark. The sharks really don't care, you're not feeding them. You might get lucky if one comes by because they're curious, but that's it. It's not going to come back twice. Guadalupe really was all the best filming, all the best photography, and all the best science was really going on there, and it really got shut down. And potentially opens it up for poaching because those are valuable animals. I mean, you catch a great white shark, and they are protected. In Mexico, you might have 4,000 pounds of fish that you could sell. So there's concern of that. It certainly hurt a long-term research program that was going on through our colleagues in Mexico, Mexican scientists, because they're supported by the divers. The divers, like Cocos, they pay in Reviajeros, they pay a dive fee, so that pays the rangers, who in turn get to enforce and observe the island. So I think if you do it right, and we are trying to persuade the Mexican government to control it. What happened is last time I was there were 15 boats. And one of them was like a triple decker. There were like 30 divers, and they had like 4 cages. And there's just too much chum, too much going on. And the sharks are just really charged up. So energetically, they're spending a lot of their bank, their storage, by running around and grabbing tuna and not really getting the caloric intake that they really would be otherwise if they're in a regular predation pattern.
Interesting.
So it's a cost benefit, but I think the Mexican government will open it again, and I think it'll be much more managed, and it'll benefit hopefully both sides.
I have a two-part question. You mentioned earlier how the hammerhead sharks were circumnavigating using the electromagnetic field from the underwater mountains. But the question is, these sharks, they don't raise their offspring, right? Like the children pop out and then they're on their own,
right.
See kids. Does that mean that the sharks themselves have kind of a genetic memory of the migration patterns? So if you were to just leave the mountains alone and just keep the area safe.
Well, if you look at bird migration patterns, same thing. They don't teach their young. Well, some will keep them with them, but it's not like a teaching. But yeah, that's what it's believed. It's that it's a genetic memory. And for example, white sharks migrate to the Central Pacific, the adults, every year between here and Hawaii. And it's like going from the In-N-Out to the salad bar. Like, what's the point of swimming 2,500 miles one way to get less caloric intake? It turns out there was an expedition a few years ago with Woods Hole and Scripps that they're actually diving. We never thought that white sharks were deep divers. The diving behavior looks like more like 1,500 feet on one shark. They're going after giant squid. So they are getting something, and they're probably reproducing. But, the Earth has shifted, right? Like right now, the poles are changing. It's like maybe there was something out there that they have this genetic memory of, and it's 4,000 feet underwater now. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, and I'm not an expert in this field, but it definitely, there is some genetic memory there for these migratory pathways and even behaviors, I think.
Do you have a second part? Is that it? No. Okay. David.
Question is if sharks are harmed by sonar, because I understand whales get their hearing all messed up when the Navy practices sonar, and the navies around the world are getting more geared up and using more sonar. Are sharks at risk from human conflict?
I've never seen a study. Sharks are really hard to study. Dolphins are hard enough to study, but at least they come up to the surface and you can see them, and also we put them in captivity. Many species of shark don't do well in captivity. I don't know anybody who's experimented using high energy sound. There definitely have been incidents of sharks dying near super high energy. So if the shark was right in front of the beam of whatever this naval, something that's super high pulse, their ear structure is much different. They don't have the cavity that cetaceans have, so they're less susceptible. They have a really dense body, like almost no air spaces. And marine mammals, like we have a lot of air spaces, or terrestrial mammals too. And so that sonic pulse can do a lot more damage. So I've never heard of a study. I would suspect that if they were right in front of the beam, it probably would do some damage. It's almost like getting punched, right? But it also attenuates by square, and so probably not as susceptible as marine mammals, who also use sound to receive, to echolocate, but also to receive communications acoustically.
Well, thank you for everyone for your. We got one more, two more.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Doorknob questions.
Yeah, where's the most ethical place to snorkel with whale sharks, in terms of like not a ton of boats on them, licensing,
Yeah, well, the closest is probably La Paz, which is pretty good. There's kind of too many people.
That's what I'm worried about. Is
The water
tiny-
quality is terrible too. It's right there. Kona's really good. Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of eyes on among the operators. You're not supposed to get dropped on the shark. You're supposed to keep a distance from it, snorkel alongside. You can't scuba. I'd say probably Hawaii is the best place.
Okay. Thank you. And do you allow snorkelers on your trips that you were talking about?
I don't know about this trip. This is a scuba trip. We have a couple topside spots available. It's not the best snorkeling. I mean, the best snorkeling probably is just La Jolla Shore, where the leopard sharks are. And I think, I'm not sure if they're here yet. It's right about now is when they all start to come in. August, September. Yeah.
One more.
So I heard that there was a relation, you can do some kind of relationship where you say, well, a shark in the water is worth X amount of money to the tourist business, and it's actually worth more that way than it is as a piece of meat or fish, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really key thing to promote. Do you know anything about, like, is it like 5 times, or is it's such a variable, isn't it? It's like how long of a piece of string, but
yeah,
it's a
we're
really
trying
key
to do
thing.
that right now. We just did 40 or 50 surveys with, we can get the value if they'll give it to us, but the Mexican government will tell us how much the value of the fishing is. So we're doing, that's the first thing we do is go and, so we did that. I know it's been done in Cabo Pulmo. It's been done in Playa Carmen. Cabo Pulmo, I thought there might even be a slide because Carmen did her master's on it, but it's something like a shark's worth $170,000 and it would have been worth around maybe $1,000. So, and it's in other areas, I mean, it's worth several million. We did one in Borneo, in Malaysia, Sipadan it's called. And the sharks there to local tourism services were worth $7 million, whereas a one-time thing, they don't get a lot there for sharks, less than $100. So it's orders of magnitude more value alive than dead.
That's huge.
And that's hopefully a strong argument to governments. It's like, this is the gift that keeps giving, plus all the other ecological services that sharks provide by maintaining a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. Anyone with any can ask our speaker after the program. Thank you, David,
Thanks
so much
for
for
having me.
coming.
Really enjoyed
And for
it.
the folks online, if you like what you saw here tonight, please consider
thanks to Amy
subscribing.
for the
And
invitation.
thank you, Amy, as well. And for the folks online, if you like what you saw here tonight, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It helps us out a ton. And if you're in LA, why not come on by? We do this every single Thursday, and you can meet our amazing speakers in person and ask your questions from our live audience. That's going to do it for us here at the Adventurers Club. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time off the beaten path. Good night.